Good evening. This is CBC Windsor News Live at 6, and I'm Jason Vio. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's what's making news tonight. There's a local charity in Windsor that owns land it wants to develop, but isn't able to do anything with it. We'll explain coming up. And as the Democrats talk about who they want to run against Donald Trump in the upcoming presidential election, we take a look at how Michigan will play into all of this as a swing state. Plus, doors at the LCBO will open tomorrow for the first time in 2 weeks. We'll break down the deal in just a few minutes. Have you ever received a gift you couldn't use? Well, Habitat for Humanity has found itself in a similar situation. The organization was gifted land in Stony Point in the eastern part of Lakeshore, but there's a snag. The home building charity can't do much on the land. The CBC Windsor's Dale Molnar picks up the story.
Habitat for Humanity has 6 families that would like to build homes for. Someone donated these 3 lots in Stony Point recently, but there's a hiccup. There's a freeze on new construction because the sewage system in that area of Lakeshore can't handle any more development, and it will be some time before it can. So instead of building, Habitat is selling. It plans to use the money to buy property in Windsor to help families in need sooner.
The property we want to buy is in Windsor, and it's on bus routes. So this is an ideal opportunity for us to be able to swap something out in Stony Point for some property that's on bus routes that's more helpful to our families.
Lakeshore is in the final stages of putting together a water and wastewater master plan. It would involve building a new sewage treatment facility for about $70 million.
The water wastewater master plan identified it in the Stony Point area where the lagoons currently are. There's additional land. That's the preferred location identified in the EA. And we are intending to get rid of our lagoons for the most part from an operational perspective, although they may, in detailed design, be recommended to hold some of the, overage flows that we get when it's wet weather conditions.
It's part of an overall $260 million plan. Mayor Tracy Bailey recently stated in a release, "It is clear there is a critical need to make significant infrastructure improvements to protect our residents, as well as the environment, which has been identified as a strategic priority for this council." Habitat has the 3 properties up for sale for just under $300,000, and they have a conditional offer on the 3 properties in Windsor for $200,000. Coughlin says if they can't sell the Stony Point properties right away, they may fundraise to buy the Windsor properties. The water and wastewater master plan goes to Lakeshore Council in September. It will take 5 years before the sewage improvements can be finished. Habitat wants to sell these properties sooner than later because they're concerned if they have to fundraise to buy the properties in Windsor, they'll miss out on that opportunity. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Stony Point.
It's not uncommon for people to say they want more city buses on the road, but for a group of East End residents, that's the opposite of what they say they want. Transit Windsor is starting a new route that would make stops along Radcliffe Avenue. Some in that area are opposing that plan.
No one is opposed to transit in the area, but we have not been given an answer as to why our safety concerns are not being answered and why this route cannot be on other streets that have actual demand and are designed to handle a bus. There are other viable alternatives.
Now, ridership is growing, and Transit Windsor Executive Director Tyson Craig told councillors he anticipates the route will be well used. Officials will evaluate the route more than a year after. Meanwhile, the residents presented a petition to council with more than 300 signatures. They have 3 major concerns. The road is too narrow, there are too many stops, and it could impact on-street parking. Well, Joe Biden's decision to no longer pursue a second term in the White House continues to be dissected, analyzed, and processed. The 46th president announced just yesterday he was dropping out of the race amid concerns from within the Democratic Party that he would be unable to defeat Donald Trump. Michael Breschgold chairs the Windsor chapter of Democrats Abroad. He applauds Biden's decision.
I think what was key to this is that he did it for the good of the country, and he knew that he wasn't going to be able to serve that the next 4 years or be elected those 4 years, so he's giving someone else a chance to be the next nominee, which I think is very patriotic and very selfless of him.
Jerome Vaughn is also closely watching as this political drama unfolds. He's the news director at WDET in Detroit. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
So how are people reacting to this news in Detroit?
Well, I think the first reaction has been a level of shock. There's been a lot of discussion about whether President Biden was going to drop out or not. There's been a lot of pressure for him to do that. But still, I think in the back of people's heads, they thought, he's pretty stubborn. He's going to hang out for a while. And so I think the timing has been surprising to a lot of people. I think the next thing is for people who are supporters of the Democrats to figure out, well, who is actually going to be at the top of the ticket. Right now, it looks like Kamala Harris, but there's still some uncertainty there. And I think folks want to have things figured out a bit more.
And as we know, people are going to be watching Michigan closely in the upcoming presidential election. It's a swing state. So do you think a possible Kamala Harris ticket makes things better or worse for the Democrats?
Oh, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Learn not to prognosticate. I think there will be some advantages. Kamala Harris is younger than President Biden, would have those same age-related issues that have been the source of a lot of criticism in recent weeks. But she still is very closely tied to President Biden and his administration and his policies. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. We already know that the Republican Party nationally, as well as here in Michigan, is already on the attack when it comes to Vice President Harris.
And your governor, Gretchen Whitmer, her name was often thrown out as a nominee if Biden were to step down, but we know that she has put her support behind Harris. Do you see any scenario where she put her own name in the race?
For president or for vice president?
Oh, good question. I guess we were talking about president, but I guess vice president's also a possibility. Do you see her putting her name for any of those roles?
Well, I think for president, not this year. There's a lot of uncertainty. The process is really going to be condensed. I think anybody other than Vice President Harris who wants to run as a Democrat is going to face some just insurmountable challenges that will be difficult to resolve. I think as far as vice president, I think the vice presidential nominee, I think it's really out there that they want a white male to balance the ticket with, a female of color.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jerome, for your perspective on this.
Glad to anytime.
Jerome Vaughn is the news director at WDET in Detroit. Our region's health unit is warning the public after a bat captured in Windsor, Essex, tested positive for rabies. The local medical officer of health is reminding people not to touch or feed unfamiliar animals. The Windsor Essex County Health Unit says there was no human exposure to the bat and that the transmission of rabies in our area remains low. Still, officials are reminding people that rabies can be deadly to humans and people should take precautions to avoid being bitten or scratched by a wild or domestic animal. Ensuring your own pets are up to date on rabies vaccinations is another recommendation. Well, the LCBO strike officially came to an end today, just after midnight, just over 2 weeks after it began as well. Workers ratified their new collective agreement over the weekend. Ryan Patrick Jones has the details and the reaction.
Doors at shuttered LCBO stores will reopen to customers tomorrow. Striking workers return today to get the shelves ready. The union says 90% of its 8,000 members who voted approved of the new contract.
It was about protecting those revenues that we generate for the province and keeping those revenues in the public hands.
The contract includes wage increases across the board, the conversion of 1,000 casual workers to permanent part-time status, and better access to benefits. Ontarians we spoke to today say they're relieved the strike is over.
Well, it's good, because I don't know what percentage of the population drinks it, but I would imagine it's a large amount.
I'm glad that the workers are going back to work, definitely.
Earlier today, Premier Doug Ford spoke for the first time since the strike ended.
We got the deal signed. People are back to work. Everyone's going to have a great summer.
One of the main issues was the Ontario government's plan to allow ready-to-drink cocktails to be sold alongside beer, wine, and cider in grocery, big box, and convenience stores. The union worried that losing exclusive rights to sell drinks like hard seltzers would eat into the LCBO's revenue and lead to job losses. The province accelerated those plans last week, putting pressure on the union during the strike. But Ford says ready-to-drink beverages are so popular, there are enough sales to go around.
They can't even keep ready to drink on the shelves, so we can see that market growing within the LCBO.
The union says it did get some wins on the issue, including a promise that no LCBO stores would close over the next 3 years and a guarantee its workers would continue to handle a certain amount of ready-to-drink inventory.
So we needed to ensure that there was still volumes in our facility, and bringing back 1.25 million cases into our facilities provides the job security to our logistics and warehousing people.
The LCBO says it's focused on returning to normal operations in support of its retail and wholesale customers. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it's still unofficial. Sarnia harmonica player Mike Stevens has performed the most northerly concert in history. He played out in the cold at the North Pole last Thursday. Here's a sample of his work. Now, although it's summer, it was still very cold in the North Pole, so remember that advice about not putting your lips on metal when it's freezing? Well, Stevens had to do just that.
Yeah, man, it's a metal harmonica, and I didn't know until I started to play whether it would even work. It really shouldn't. It should freeze up, or of course, it would stick to my lips. I was holding the harmonica, and my left hand was a little bit exposed, so I got a little bit of frostbite on my left hand, but nothing serious. Totally worth it.
Now, Stevens hopes to set a Guinness World Record. He's submitted all the paperwork and is waiting to hear back. Time now for a look at weather, and Josiah Sinanen joins us live for that this evening. Josiah, I can't even imagine putting myself in his shoes, playing the harmonica, which I can't do, but doing it in the North Pole, it would be pretty wild.
Yeah, it really is a wild story, especially when we're so far down here on the 42nd parallel. He was at the 90th. So I can't even imagine wanting to step outside in the wild North Pole, but really incredible story, Jason. Would you ever visit the North Pole?
If you could promise that Santa Claus would be there, I would visit the North Pole for sure, Josiah.
That is a very good reason. You know what? I think it is something on my bucket list, but I definitely wouldn't be playing a harmonica. Maybe a bit of singing, but Jason, I do hope we see Mike Stevens in the Guinness World Records soon. And for now, we can enjoy the balmy southwestern Ontario weather we have in store.
So certainly nothing like what we just saw there from the North Pole, Josiah, but what are we looking at for our local weather forecast?
Yeah, so let's take a look at our current forecast for the week. Jason, for most of the week, some good chance of precipitation, ending with some nice sun on Friday. Moderately high temperatures, but still a nice reprieve from what we experienced in June. Tonight, we're seeing lows drop down to 18 degrees with a 30% chance of showers and a chance of a thunderstorm as well. Tomorrow, high of 29 and a low of 20, a 30% chance of showers again with a risk of a thunderstorm in the afternoon. On Wednesday, a 60% chance of showers or thunderstorms with a high of 29 and an overnight low of 19. Thursday, 40% chance that those showers continue with a high of 26 and a low of 16. That is our coolest day of the week. And Jason, Friday, that sun will be free to shine. 27 degrees is the high with an overnight low of 16 degrees and clear skies.
All right, so there is some light at the end of that tunnel. After the rain clears, the sunshine comes out. Thanks so much, Josiah.
Thank you, Jason.
As we look atop our tower cam at downtown Windsor, the rain has stopped. That came in a little bit this afternoon, but as Josiah just told us, there is some more rain coming in the forecast, and we'll have more news for you coming up after the break. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has made her first public appearance since entering the race to be the Democratic Party's nominee for president. She's gaining support and now appears to be the most likely candidate to lead the party into the November election. Today, Harris was filling in for Joe Biden at a White House event. She used this opportunity to praise her boss. CBC's Ellen Morrow has more.
All eyes on Kamala Harris, praising President Joe Biden as momentum builds for her to replace him on the Democratic ticket.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for his service to our nation.
Hundreds of Democratic lawmakers are now backing Harris's bid for the top job after Biden endorsed his vice president as he dropped out of the race.
Former prosecutor Kamala Harris is going to be the right person to hold Donald Trump accountable.
She is going to win this race, and she is going to win it with massive support.
She has fought hard for freedoms and for rights of Americans, and she is a genuine leader.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi pledged her enthusiastic support, writing, "I have full confidence that she will lead us to victory in November." The money is also pouring in, the Harris campaign raising more than $50 million in less than 24 hours.
Vice President Kamala Harris has excited the community.
Harris still has to officially win over Democratic delegates who vote in the party's nominee, but she's unlikely to face any challengers, Democrats eager to come together after weeks of party chaos.
You know, the president took the honorable path. For him, and for so many of us, it's not just the legacy, it's moving forward.
As Democrats coalesce, Republicans are already on the offensive, unveiling this attack ad against Harris just hours after Biden dropped out.
Look what she got done. A border invasion, runaway inflation, the American dream dead. They created this mess.
A preview of what's likely in the weeks to come as Harris works to shore up Democratic support and then, she hopes, make her case to the American people. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
Political shakeups in the United States can certainly vibrate here into Canada, and the current situation in Washington is getting a lot of attention in Ottawa. Joe Biden's exit from the campaign means the Canadian government will be dealing with a new president in the new year. The CBC's Kate McKenna looks at what that could mean.
Officials in Canada joining the chorus of those thanking Joe Biden.
I want to thank President Biden for serving the people for 50 years. It's not easy.
I saw a man with vision, someone who cared very deeply about people, and the kind of person that has done so much, not only for the United States, but for the world.
Joe Biden always acted in the best interests of the American people and the United States of America. And I think yesterday was no exception to that.
And with Biden out, no matter what, there will be a different president after the election.
What we're doing now as part of Team Canada is to engage with people on both sides of the aisle, making sure that we communicate that this is what I call the essential relationship.
The U.S. is Canada's biggest trade partner, accounting for nearly $1 trillion in trade in 2022.
The message to our American friends: we're your ally. We aren't your enemy. You know, we're stronger together.
Democratic leadership candidate Kamala Harris has ties to Canada. She went to school in Montreal.
If she's eventually made president of the United States, it would be a really good pick for the relationship between Canada and the United States.
The leader of the NDP says a potential Harris presidency would be historic.
The idea of having the first ever female president of the United States, for my kids, my daughters to grow up seeing or to know that there was a racialized Black woman who was the president of one of the most powerful countries in the world, I can't even begin to imagine what that would be like in terms of inspiration.
The Canadian government says it's ready for whoever ends up in the White House, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that a second Trump presidency would not be easy. Donald Trump has already promised a worldwide tariff on imported goods, and Ottawa is already in talks with Trump's inner circle to try to push for an exemption. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
As a heat wave extends into its fourth week in Western Canada, crews are bracing for spreading wildfires. Thick smoke from existing fires is already causing health concerns in British Columbia and Alberta. 2 areas in BC's Caribou region are under evacuation orders because of a massive fire in Antler Creek. Now, crews are scrambling to save Barkerville, an historic gold rush town.
We've been working with the Barkerville team, putting up sprinklers and tying into the 9 existing fire hydrants.
Fire crews have withdrawn from the Shetland Creek fire in BC's southern interior because of the risk they may get trapped there. That fire is burning in areas near the Trans-Canada Highway. More than a dozen buildings have already been destroyed in the region. In Williams Lake, located in the central interior of the province, a state of emergency has been declared. Crews are battling flames on the outskirts of town. Well, still to come here on CBC Windsor News Live at 6, there's a new stamp that's supposed to smell like a popular food in France. That story is next. The Seine River, which runs through the heart of Paris, will play a starring role in this year's Olympic Games, both during the opening ceremony on Friday and at some of the sporting events. CBC's chief correspondent Adrian Arsenault takes a look at the preparations in and along the famous river.
To be on the Seine at any time is special, but This ride on this boat with this captain along this route, this is precisely the plan for the athletes' parade leading to the opening ceremony. It's hard to imagine anything more ambitious. 10,500 athletes traveling 6 kilometers along the Seine, westward through central Paris, right to the Eiffel Tower. Potentially 300,000 people watching from shore. It's a huge idea. The artist's rendition of what it will look like suggests it will be a spectacular spectacle, sailing past so many landmarks, so many venues for the Olympics. The Seine is the main artery for the whole Games, but imagine the headache of this if you're in charge of security. All of the buildings and windows and balconies and rooftops and bridges and parks accessing the river. How do you keep everyone safe? Now, plans have been scaled back to limit public access, and security officials say they feel ready, but just in case there is a plan B at a stadium, and ultimately it will be the French president who decides whether this can go ahead. Something else is unclear about the role of this murky river. Will it actually be okay to swim in? The imagery is ideal, but the water might not be. It's actually been illegal to swim in the Seine for about 100 years because of concerns about pollution. But France has poured a fortune into trying to make it clean. Unfortunately, every time there's a heavy rain, sewage pours into it. So will it be safe enough, clean enough for the athletes? The Seine has an outsized romantic place in the heart of the city, so it's only fitting it has a huge place at the heart of the Olympics. That is the perfect narrative, but this is an imperfect river in an imperfect era. So we'll just have to see and hope the ride is as smooth as this one.
Adrienne Arsenault will co-host the National from Paris this week. CBC Live coverage of the opening ceremony of the Olympics begins Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. The event itself starts at 1:30. Well, sometimes the next best thing to tasting a baguette in Paris is smelling the famed French staple.
If you rub the surface air, it smells the bread.
Now, this is a recently unveiled commemorative scratch and sniff postage stamp. It's designed to evoke the feeling of walking into a French bakery, but the real-world smell tests for the stamps have not been consistent. Some have described getting hints of vanilla and even flan custard, but not the baguette itself, and others say they only smell paper. Olympic visitors in Paris can buy the baguette stamps from local post offices there for just under $3. And CBC is the official broadcaster for the Summer Olympic Games. To celebrate, CBC Windsor has limited edition pins to commemorate the 2024 Olympics in Paris, just like the one that I'm wearing here. You can get your very own, and we want to hear your stories about your favorite Olympic memory ever. That's how you can enter for a chance to win one of these. You can text us at 519-984-2051 or email that memory at windsor@cbc.ca. We'll draw winners at random throughout the games, and remember to put the Olympic memory in the subject line. Well, that's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks again. Have a good night, and we'll see you here tomorrow.